voting and candidates. In this lesson, we're going to look at more about voting, which is, like we've said before, one of our major rights as U.S. citizens. But we're going to focus more on the candidates and the people that we actually are voting for, who they are, what their positions are, and we're going to give you some tips on how we think you should think when you're picking a candidate. A lot of times people pick candidates just because maybe their parents picked them, or they like the way they talk, or something about the way they look, or something like that. People don't always vote based on other things about the candidate, like what they actually believe in, or their history, like things they've done in the past. So we're going to look at who these people are that we vote for, and give you some tips on how we think you should think when you're deciding who to vote for. But remember, what we're giving you is just tips. How you vote is completely up to you. So objectives, we're going to describe how the process of the election is an example of federalism. Remember that federalism is a fancy word of just saying that we have states and we have a national government. So we don't just have one government, we have a bunch of governments. We're going to analyze the importance of voting in midterm and off-year elections. That means years when there's not a presidential election. Because the years when there's not a presidential election, we're voting for people that are a little bit closer to home, like people that are going to run our towns and our cities and our states. So those are kind of almost more important because those are people that are going to have more of a direct impact on our lives. Our essential questions are: how does the voting process work in state and local elections, so close to home? And who's who in state and local governments? Who are these people that we're voting for? So we've talked about national elections. We talked about the presidential election. That's the big one that everyone tends to focus on. And you also get to pick senators and representatives that represent you in Washington, D.C. But state government and local government, so Pennsylvania and the town that you live in, they're people that have more of a direct impact on your daily life because they focus more on things that you experience on a daily basis, like schools, roads, taxes, the police. They oversee these things. So these elections are almost more important to you because these people are going to have more of a direct impact and more contact with you on a daily basis, or at least in the things that they control. So just like the national government, state governments are split up into the branches that we've talked about in the past: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. We're going to go through each one and kind of tell you how a state represents those branches, like who's in the executive, who's in the legislative, and who's in the judicial. And you'll see that it's a lot like the national government, just on a state level. So remember, the three branches are executive, legislative, and judicial. Executive, that was the one that had the president. Legislative, that's the one that had Congress. They were the ones that made laws. And judicial was the courts and all the judges and things like that. We have that in a state government as well. We have that in Pennsylvania. So who's the executive branch in state government? Executive branch is someone that we call the governor. Just like a president, they get a 4-year term, which means they have to be the governor for 4 years. They do the same thing as the president. They make sure that laws are being followed and they enforce laws. They also come up with a state budget, how money is going to be spent. They're in charge of the state militia, which is kind of like the army for the state. And they can veto bills just like the president can, but only on a state level. So the governor of Pennsylvania can't veto a bill about New Jersey. The governor of Pennsylvania can only veto bills that are about Pennsylvania. Our current governor is Tom Corbett, but not for much longer. Our new governor is his name is Wolf. He'll be taking over in January, but currently our governor's name is Tom Corbett. He has people underneath of him, like you see in the bullet points there. So on the national level, you have the president and the vice president. They're the executive branch on the national level. In Pennsylvania, or at a state level, we have the governor, lieutenant governor, which is kind of like the vice president. And then maybe in your town or your city, you have a mayor. Those are examples of executive on a state level. Those are the main people that are in charge. They're like the president of the state or the town that you live in. We also have a legislative branch. Remember, those are the people that make laws. And just like Congress makes laws for the whole country, the legislative branch in each state makes laws just for that state. So who are these people that we vote for? It's set up a lot like Congress. There's a Senate and there's a House of Representatives. And we pick people, just like we pick people to be in Congress, we pick the people that are going to be in what's called the PA General Assembly. And they make laws just for our state. You can see there are requirements there about them similar to that of a congressman on a national level. There's age requirements. You can be a little bit younger if you want to be in the PA General Assembly. So again, just like the national government has Congress, which is the Senate and the House. State governments, our state has the PA General Assembly, which is just like Congress. They have a Senate and a House. The only difference is the PA General Assembly can only do things in Pennsylvania. They can only make laws about Pennsylvania. Then we have a judicial branch, which is all the courts and all the judges who are in charge of being a judge, interpreting and applying state laws, making sure that people are following them, but then if they don't, there's court cases to decide guilt or not guilt or what to do about a situation. They get elected, though, which is a little bit different from the national government. So judges are elected positions. Depending on the type of judge, you get elected for 6 years or maybe even 10 years, which is a pretty long time. You can serve as many terms as you want. There's no limit, but when you turn 70 years old, you have to stop being a judge. So the judicial branch in Pennsylvania is 60 judicial courts, and you don't have to know all these numbers and things like that. It's just kind of information so you can just think about what this stuff looks like. There's a Superior Court, there's a Commonwealth Court, there's a Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. There's all kinds of courts, so stuff starts out at like the lower level of it, and it can work its way up to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, just like in the national government. So judicial positions on a national level, they're appointed, not elected. It means they actually get picked to be the judges. But in states in Pennsylvania, we actually get to pick the people that are going to be judges. So what's the purpose of all these people? Why do we have them? And then we also have a national government. So why do we have like Barack Obama, Congress, and Supreme Court? Why do we have all that at a national level? But then we also have all that kind of same stuff on a state level and on a local level. It seems like a lot of government. So what's the point? How come Barack Obama is just not in charge of Pennsylvania? Why do we have to have a governor? It's so there's a government that's just in charge of that state, so they can focus on just one state. If Barack Obama had to, and Congress in Washington, D.C., if they had to focus on little things like fire departments, police, schools, taxes, roads, making sure that trash is getting picked up. If they had to focus on all that stuff, they wouldn't be able to focus on bigger things like dealing with other countries around the world or trading with other countries around the world or dealing with something that affects the entire country. So these state and local governments are there to take care of things on more of a local level. So it's a little bit easier for the national government. So they do similar things, but they're more in charge of things that we experience on a daily basis, like the fire department or police, the prison system, making sure that there's fair laws about housing, making sure that schools have the funding that they need, your trash getting picked up. These are all examples and the purposes of state and local government. So you know what these people do and who they are, these people at state and local levels. And they have a lot of impact on your daily life. You might not see it all the time, but they do. So how should you decide which ones to vote for? How should you decide which people you want to be in charge and have say in your state or in your town or city? This is just an example of something you can use. It's called Vote Right. Righteous governance, integrity, giftedness, heart, and track record. Those are things that you can think about when you're voting for someone. How you vote is completely up to you. If you see a candidate and they say something about a topic that you believe very strongly in, and you agree with that person, you can vote for them just based on that if you want to. It's completely up to you. What you should really do is look at the candidates, try and learn more about them, learn about them as a person, and really look too at that last one with T, track record, which means their history. What did they do before they were running for office? What did they do before they were trying to win an election? What kind of job did they have? Maybe they were in the government in some other way. Have they ever done anything wrong that might deter you or stop you from voting for them? That's what you really got to look at. To finish up, there's a quote here. It says, "The best way for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." A lot of people simply do not vote. A lot of people simply do not vote. Even in presidential elections, which are the big elections, even in presidential elections, usually 55 to 60% of people vote. There's a lot of people, millions and millions and millions of people who just don't vote. This quote is saying that if you have complaints, you don't like something about the country or your state or your town, and you don't vote, that's the biggest way we can impact that. We can decide who is going to be in charge of our states and our local governments. If we don't vote, then we're not impacting that. And people are just going to keep getting elected that maybe we don't like. So this quote is saying that if you don't vote, you're not trying to get rid of that evil that you see in government. And you might not see evil in government, but that's what the quote is trying to say. If you do see evil and you do see something wrong, and then you don't vote, then you're not doing anything about it. It's the one way that you can really, really easily impact that process. So make sure you join us for a live class on Tuesday and Thursday. If you have questions or need help, please contact me. My information is there. Be sure to answer the questions that are underneath of this video. If you don't have any questions, good luck.